We are now here for part two of our pre-scene analysis. And part two is obviously carrying on from part one, is taking it one step forward from part one. A quick recap now. In part one, we started to learn about our company Pixelwiz. We learned what the company's major business is. We learned where the company is situated. Then we started with an industry analysis, which was given as part of the pre scene itself, that took you to a lot of details, mainly relating to what the gaming industry is like, what are the different types of game consoles, what are the different types of games. So the last first part of the pre-scene, rather the last part in the first part of the pre-scene, was speaking about simulation games. That's where we ended it. So that's where we'll continue from, and we are still talking about different types of games that are available in today's time. So taking it forward from there, another type of game is the sports games. Sport games are one where players can take control of their favorite team and just play. So for example, a soccer game might enable the players to act as a team manager, making selections, deciding tactics. All of us have seen this in the real world. The game will permit the player's team to compete against a computerized opponent, or the software will show its predicted outcome of a match against another human player's chosen team and tactics. So this is something that all of us would have been access to. It would be something that we have seen. Sport games are becoming very popular. So that's another kind. There are video game versions of most popular sports most of the time. So you'll see football games, soccer games, you'll see basketball games, golf games. These are all sport games where you become the player, you play the game or manage the tactics. Next, there are real time strategy games. Now real time games dispense with the concept of players taking turns against either a human or computerized opponent. They enable players to put the elements under their control into operation as they wish to and make changes as they proceed. For example, a real time game might start with the players being given control of, let's say, 20 workers who are at the edge of a blanked out screen. The player must then make strategic decisions as to how many of these workers will be put on various tasks to start, a construction or agriculture or exploration. Could be anything. You're making a strategy to achieve a certain goal. All of us have been, in some way seen or been part of real-time strategy games. These usually involve a competition against computer or other human opponents who are competing for the same scarce resources. For example, you need to finish a particular task to finish the level or to move a level forward, but yes, the opponent or the computer against which you're playing is going to prevent you from doing so. Let's say you need to conquer a castle as part of the strategy game. The person or the computer or the person who's defending the castle will try to oppose you. So you'll have to create a strategy to make sure you win. These are real time strategy games which are available. On the other hand, we also have multiplayer online games. These are called MMOs, massively multiplayer online. These games involves the player taking the role of a character in a huge and detailed virtual world. For example, the player might take on the role of an elf in a fantasy world. You then have to, uh, grow the elf, grow your skills, grow your, just how you play the game. Look at different maps, look at different worlds. It's a free roam. You need to collect objects. You can interact with other characters. That is something that is possible, and that's called a multiplayer game, when an entire new universe is created which you can explore. For example, two players might trade items with one another, or they could decide to fight. As the game progresses, the character will develop skills and amass goods. There is, however, always a risk that the character will die, for which you'll have to begin your journey from the beginning. So you have to be very careful. These are your multiplayer games. Then there are educational games as well. These games are generally designed to help children develop skills such as shape and pattern recognition. The gameplay is designed to reward players for correctly identifying and classifying an item. Now, the list of games that we have just presented to you is not an exhaustive list, and many games combine elements of two or more categories. For example, a multiplayer game can need you to use strategy. A sports game can be played on a multiplayer version. So there is a lot of possibility and mix and match that can happen between games. These are just a list of games that rather can be categorized in an easy and simple way that we've put for you over here as part of this pre-scene analysis. Before we move on, just make sure you're comfortable with the first part of the pre-scene. You've gone through it very many times, you let it sink in, and then you started the second part with me. Be comfortable with the different types of games, different type of consoles. Have a brief understanding of that, because that will be very important for your knowledge as we move deeper into our case study. So, as I mentioned, this is not an exhaustive list. Games can be written with a view of enabling individual play or cooperative play or comparative play. The theme can be very varying depending on the game. Individual play may involve solving puzzles or playing against virtual opponents. Cooperative and competitive play involves playing either with or against human players. Some consoles permit multiplayers to play simultaneously, with the screen divided to enable each player to control his or her character. So, again, different types of games which are available in the market. A very important aspect we are coming to now is that many people are involved in the creation of a video game. When it's a big company, especially ours, Pixelwiz, you can just imagine that not one person is creating the game, right? There will be many people who create very complex games. So, who are the people involved? First and foremost, there will be a game producer. Now, the game producer is in overall charge of the commissioning and development of a video game. Video game companies develop ideas internally through market research. They also draw upon ideas that they get from social media forums. So, a social media team for any company and a good market research team can be seen as your competitive advantage, because if your social media team, your market research team understands that people want to play games of this sort, let's say people want to play sport games right now, that's the mood, that's the theme, then you can look to develop a game in that area, in that genre, in that section. So the game producer's job is the overall charge of commissioning and development of a video game. It's a very important person. Secondly, there are game designers. Now, game designers create the basic brief that drives the development. The designer must make decisions concerning the nature of the game, the way the players will play, the interactions that will happen between the game, and the game elements. Those decisions allow for both the nature of the gameplay and the aesthetic appeal to be set. So, this is arguably one of the most important people in the entire process. Team management will be of key importance to any company, because your game designer and his design team are going to shape the game at the end of the day. The producer only set things in motion by commissioning and development of the video game by looking at external and internal factors. The game designer actually puts it to use, actually starts to shape the game. So it's a very important person. Third, there are game artists. Now, game artists use the designer's brief to create the characters and the backgrounds. Let's say the designer is saying that I want to create a fantasy world that is going to have a castle, a prince, a princess. The artists will actually start to put that in place. Those must be suitable both for gaming and the game elements, and also as art for promotional materials such as web pages, which can be supplied on digital media. Then there are level designers. So, level designers expand on the designer's brief, so the game designer's brief, by creating the story underpinning a game. For example, an RTS game might progress through several stages. So, a real time strategy game obviously has levels, with each level changing the nature of the gameplay slightly, and possibly the appearance of the background and the controllable elements such as the characters. So, under the game designers, I'll say the game artists fall into place, the level designers fall into place. So, the game designer must have a very clear vision of what actually needs to happen. Only then the game artists and the level designers will be able to do a good job. So this entire team management process that we are speaking about will be key. Level designers must also adapt the files created by the game artists to ensure that they can be programmed and incorporated into the game. That may require compromises such as deciding on the complexity of the game element. Greater complexity enhances realism, but it also requires more processing power. So the hardware should be supportable. You make a game that has lots of graphics. Let's say it's the best graphical game. But what if there is no hardware available that can actually use that kind of graphic and the end user or customer experience it? So you must keep in mind the realistic side of a game as well, created in such a way that it's accessible to most people and it's accessible, easy to use in a PC or a console that most people have. So it's going to be a very technical job for a level designer, for a game designer. Throughout this process, we are understanding that the entire field will be dominated by highly skilled individuals. And to give them creative freedom, an autocratic structure would not really work. Because do you think creative people like to be fit into a structure? I don't think so. So when we go deeper into our pre-scene, we'll try to figure out what the structure of my organization is. How is my structure working? Are there any responsibility centers? Do these level designers, game designers have absolute freedom to make their decisions, their choices? We'll learn all of that once we get to our company, Pixelwiz. Right now, again, just the industry analysis is being conducted. We have not started speaking about our company. They're just giving you a background of what kind of consoles are there, what kinds of games are there, what kind of people are involved in the process. So you can relate better when we go to our company's analysis. So remember, it's going to be a very technical job. Lots of specialists will be involved in creating a game who will be good at their job. So they'll obviously, be having some kind of stature, some kind of experience, which is vital. Next, there are game programmers. So this they create the actual software code base for the game itself. Once everything is in place, it needs to be coded. So the game programmers do the coding. This is a complex area and there are many programming specialisms. Programmers often develop software that can be used for game development as well. For example, a driving simulator might use game development software packages to create elements such as buildings that appear on the horizon and change in shape and size as the car gets closer. Game development software also encompasses features such as physical devices that determine the effort of, say, pressing the car's brake pedal, for example. The video games require significant amount of time and effort in programming, and the creation of a new game might require hundreds of programmers working in collaboration for many months. Collaboration is becoming key, team management is becoming key over here, and you can see how many people are required to produce a top quality game. If you look at big gaming companies, they have a huge amount of programmers because yes, the designers design the game, the creators create the character, the level designers design the level, but the programmers are actually who make it into a game which can be played on the computer. They actually code the software, they actually create the software to make everything fall into place. So game programmers are very important people and you require them in a large number to be able to do a good job. So what I'm thinking over here is the time to market for a product will be long. I start to think about a game today. Will the game be ready tomorrow? I don't think so. It's going to take time because there is a whole lot of procedure, there is a whole lot of planning, there's a whole lot of coding that goes into that particular thought. So before any decisions are made, extensive research and planning will be required. So over here, you can think about various different scenarios, various different market understandings, market analysis. Hence, your topics of scenario planning can become extensively important over here. Think about a scenario where, let's say, your game doesn't work. Think about a scenario where there is some kind of a lockdown, for example. People are more at home. They start to play your games more. There is more demand. So, scenario planning will become very important in this particular situation because the time to market to make a particular game takes a whole lot of time, and I'm talking about big complex games. They're not made overnight. Now this clearly showcases to me the capital intensive nature. I'll say it is an industry. If you want to make a big successful game, you often have to spend a lot of money. So it's going to be a capital intensive, I'll say circle capital intensive task. And because this kind of people will be required, this kind of specialists will be required who will be committing their time and effort, it's going to cost us to make a game. If it's going to cost us, it's something that we will have to think about. And hence, when I think about costs, when I think about the money that will be required, I'm thinking about the different financing options that are available, the different finance options which are available for my company when a situation arises where I need to raise cash, because it's a company that is going to be investing a lot in the development stage of the of any game. So your F3 syllabus of financing, the parts that speak about financing, the parts that speak about equity, debt, all of that becomes useful over here. So briefly, we know that creating a game takes a lot of time, and the game programmer's job is something that is very technical. Now, it does take a lot of time, particularly when it's a massively multiplayer online game and some simulations that require the creation of large virtual locations. Some games are much smaller in comparison. For example, if it's a puzzle or a chess game, but so it's pretty much simple when compared to a real-time strategy game or a multiplayer game or a game where there are free roam scenarios. Then there are game testers. So game testers ensure that the game is working correctly by playing levels that have been written. The testers are checking for programming errors, but are also interested in the playing experience. Will people like it when they play this game? Game testers will also consider the suitability of the game for target markets. It might be necessary to indicate that players could be disturbed by, say, a highly realistic depiction of a crash in a driving simulation game. So the tester will tell us all of that. The tester will have knowledge about all of that. Successful video games must be playable. Playability implies that the game itself is enjoyable to play. People should be uh, I'll say attracted towards it. They must also be provided with a suitable interface that enables them to interact with the game effectively. Game design must consider the limitations of the hardware device on which it will be played. For example, a smartphone game must be suitable for a small screen. In a smartphone, you can't create a game where the details are so minute that nobody is able to see it. So keep the limitations of the hardware device in mind when you are creating a game. Now, all of this tells me that a game tester will generally have to be a person who has good market understanding, who has good market experience, who can segment the market well, who can focus on the market, and who will be somebody who just assesses whether the game will hit the mark. So, pricing also will be something that he should have some idea about. All of these topics fall under your E3 syllabus. It also brings in the aspect of risk management over here for me, because as if We do not give the correct disclaimers. You, let's say at the beginning of the game, you don't give correct disclaimers, you don't give correct pointers, you don't give the correct certificates that whether this game is for children, is for adults, for what age group, can become a legal issue, and this has happened in the real world. So risk management, for looking at the aspect of risk, this is something that can come up when you are a game creation company. Next, a console game rather offers much more scope for detailed graphics because they will be displayed on a television screen. So you must keep in mind the kind of game and for what reason you are making that game. For example, if I'm making a smartphone game, I'll make it in that way. If I'm making a console game, I'll put in more graphics because it's on a television screen. The games themselves can be more complex because players will have controllers that have buttons and joysticks, and it's easier to operate. So keep in mind the game that you are creating, and then you can involve the different graphics that are needed. Next, publishers monitor the success or failure of published games using a variety of key performance indicators. Your KPIs are part of your E3 syllabus. KPIs, critical success factors, CSFs, are part of your E3 syllabus. But they're telling us that game publishers monitor how well their game has done with a variety of KPIs. They will see the number of daily active users. If there is good number of daily active users, means people are interested, right? Next, they will also track the number of monthly average users. They'll see the average over multiple months, see how people are able to how the game is able to attract people in an average way over months. Third, the gaming companies also measure MAU and DAU because that gives an insight into the frequency of play. So the daily active users and the monthly active users, average users, sorry, are giving the companies an understanding of the frequency of play. Because when you make a game for a market, you want more people to play it, right? Companies also track average sessions per user. Related KPIs include average session length, seeing for how much time people play a particular game. When you logged in, how much time did you play? Companies track retention over different time frames, measuring the percentage of newly registered players who return within 24 hours, 7 days, or 28 days. The above statistics can be linked to player spend to establish the average revenue per user or the average revenue per daily active users. You'll be able to understand that. You'll be able to see what revenue you're earning per or based on the daily active users. So companies are able to get all of this information because they like to track how their game is being used. They also track something known as the K factor. Now, the K factor is the measure of extent to which existing players attract new players. It is sometimes thought of as a viral coefficient, which means if I like a game, I'll tell other people, right? So that's called the K factor. For example, if existing players recommend a game to 1 million friends and 300,000 of those actually sign up, then the K factor is 1.3. If I tell 2 million people and 300,000 signed up, then the K factor is 2.3. So 2 and then 3. So 2 million I spoke to, 3 million came into the pipeline. So the K factor is a technical term that is used. Now, if you see, then the company is gathering so much of data, all of these different key performance indicators. Why are you gathering it? Why are you learning from it? Why are you making the effort of going into finding them? So this is the aspect of big data that we've spoken about before as well, of how game companies are using big data to better their performance. So when we go to our company analysis down the line in the pre-scene itself, we'll try to see, does our company use extensive big data techniques? Does our company use data analysis techniques? Have they specifically mentioned it? If they have not, then you have ready information with you to put into perspective why are we not using it. It's a big advantage in today's modern world. Now, understanding if our company uses these KPIs or not will also be an important section. KPIs and CSFs are part of our E3 syllabus. These are simply some KPI examples that they've given you which are used in this industry. So when we go deeper into the pre-scene, let's say you're writing a mock question where they're telling you that your company is looking to launch a new game. So whenever you're writing your answer, you can put in over there that certain KPIs like MOU or daily average users can be something that we track and enhance the data analysis possibilities that will help us better understand if customers liked our game or not, if customers are engaged by our game or not. So by having this knowledge, by going through the pre-scene multiple times, you'll be able to have great ideas in your mind, which at the end of the day you'll be able to use if you keep in your mind and then obviously apply it to mock questions, which will show you. The application part will show you, but you need to be ready with the knowledge, and that will only happen if you've gone through the pre-scene multiple times. By the time we start mock questions, the pre-scene is not a one time thing. You will have to go through it every other day, at least 20 to 25 times before you take your exam, because only then you will be comfortable with the material. Only then you will start to remember some parts of it. Otherwise, how do you expect yourself to just keep in mind all of this information? It's too much information. So if you keep going through it multiple times, you'll automatically get an idea of the important stuff, and you will be able to keep that in your mind. I'm not asking you to learn anything, but just go through it so many times, go through it multiple times, read through it so many times that some of it is already there in your mind when you need it. Going that one step forward on the risk management part now, they tell us that most countries require video games to be classified in order to prevent children from being exposed to unsuitable content, such as on screen violence. Each country has its own system for rating games, perhaps setting a minimum age of 18 or 21 for games designed for adult audience, and lower minimums for children at different stages of development. So every country now pretty much has these rules. Adhering to the rules is key, but if you don't adhere to the rules, there can be certain risks that arise which can lead to huge reputational loss, revenue loss, liabilities, penalties, could be anything. So up until now, I have been mentioning that P3 risk management is an important syllabus area. So hope you've been noting down the different kinds of risks, the different kinds of, just the list of risks that you think our company could face. That is what I've been mentioning from the very beginning. Try to maintain that risk, because as we go deeper into the pre-scene, that list will be very handy, and it will also help you again when you're writing mock questions. So use it as something important and spend time on it. Create it. Just a list where you're writing down the different risks that our company can face. All of these systems and technologies that we have mentioned ensure that a game creation company, every single thing that we spoke about up until now, ensure that a game creation company like ours is a complex system, is not one where one person is running everything, one person is designing everything, delivering everything. It cannot work that way. It's a team of people. It's a complex system of many processes being run simultaneously, and even if there is one problem down the line in the creation of a game, the entire game will suffer. Hence, proper management along with proper controls in the organization are going to be vital. Because I'm talking about controls, I need to speak about the internal control systems that we can have in place. And this gives rise to your P3 syllabus: internal audit, internal controls, which will be important for a complex company like ours. Another syllabus area to revise, to keep in mind. Up until now, we were only discussing about the industry and about all of that, only having background knowledge with the extra industry analysis that we gave you, and now the extra industry analysis that you did as part of the pre-scene itself. You have lots of knowledge with you, lots of technical knowledge as well, as to what types of games, what types of consoles, what the market is like. And then we gave you extra industry analysis as well, which you have in mind. We have finally arrived to speaking about our company now, to learning about our company now. So all the background knowledge that you've had until now will be applied, will be kept in mind when we are speaking about our company step by step. So Pixelwiz was founded in 1986. It's a company that's been here for a long time. So we've been in the market for 35 years, which means we may have garnered some goodwill or some resistance ability, that we have been able to thrive and grow during this period. Now, do you think any company in the whole wide world exists for 35 years and nobody likes their products? I don't think it's possible. When you've existed for 35 years means you have gone through periods of recession, you've gone through periods of economic boom, you've gone through that market change, and people have still supported you. You are in the market because for such a long time, because people have liked your products. So isn't that a competitive advantage for my business? Something to keep in mind, that I've been in the market for 35 years. I'll have good market experience. Ownership of home computers was growing, and the founders were keen to establish themselves as game developers to supply to that new market. So, people were seeing that back in the time, people now started to have home computers. The demand was growing. So, the company and the founders rather noticed this, and they were keen to establish themselves as game developers to supply to this new market. This clearly means that our company noticed an opportunity in the market, and the company was open to develop a product. So the product development strategy is something that the company has been open to from the very beginning. So my company is open to this. My company is open to developing new products when there is a surge in the market. Something to keep in mind. So we can say that being a first mover for any innovative technology can be considered important for a fast changing industry. Let's say everybody wants, the fast change. Everybody wants a game that is very much in the market right now. Let's say that everybody wants to play driving games. If your company can notice this and come up with a product to serve this market, when there is a trend, when there is a boom, it will be a very big advantage. So as we, and our company has done this in the past, so it's something that's not out of our reach, can be seen as our comparative advantage, and can use this reference as part of your answer to show our company as recognizing change and taking quick action. So we saw that, the area in the market that was available to expand into, which is games on computers. We noticed it, and we served that market because of the, I'll say, push of the founders, because of the founders being ready to take that risk. So that's a nature of the company which we must keep in mind, and you can use it when we go to mock answers. Moving on, the company grew steadily throughout that period because obviously, a gap in the market was noticed, and we took advantage of that gap, and we established ourselves as one of the world's leading game developers. So this can be seen as our competitive advantage. You became one of the world's leading game developers. You're a big company. You're a global company. Pixelwiz offers a range of games for all major hardware types and across all major game types. So, in our earlier part, in our industry analysis, we have spoken about the different game types and the different hardware types. Must keep this in mind, that we are offering games for all major hardwares across all major different game types. So various games, various hardwares, various platforms are what we are offering our products on. So you can imagine the level of complexity that is going to be here. But with a larger business itinerary comes more management issues and capital investment. You have so much to look at, so many teams you need to look at, so many teams you need to, oversee. So it becomes a complicated process. Management issues can arise, and also the capital investment becomes a situation. It offers the leading games in terms of player numbers and revenues generated in many categories. So you're a leader in many categories. It's not that you're only, present in those categories. You're a leader in terms of player numbers and the revenue that you generate. You're a very big company. Pixelwizz's Cratchy Swan MMO, which is massively multiplayer online game, has more than 300 million registered players worldwide. Now we know how complex an MMO game can be. We have created that game, we have coded that game, we have made that game possible, and worldwide we have 300 million registered players. So it's a big, I'll say, product for us. Over the past year, there has been an average of 800,000 players online and playing the game at any given time. Anywhere, if you log in at any time, you'll see 800,000 other players playing this game. You can imagine how popular and how big this game is for you. Pixelwiz has 5,100 employees, half of whom are based at the company's head office in Westlands Media City. So you are situated in Media City. The name itself tells me that it's one which will be supported by technology, will be present in an area where other gaming companies are present, because the word media pushes us towards that thought. So just a thought coming to my mind, but the important part here to remember is that we have 5,100 employees, a very big company. The remainder are based in the company's 3 overseas offices. So half of them, 2,550 employees, are based in the head office. The other 2,550 are divided into 3 overseas offices. So we have offices overseas as well. This clearly tells us I'm a multinational company. If I'm a multinational company, it brings in various complexities of different currencies, different interest rates, and this directly points to my F3 syllabus, where currency hedging, currency risks, transaction risks have been brought about. Because if you have overseas companies, obviously there is going to be give and take between these companies. There is going to be some kind of revenue generation. There will be the consolidation process that will also happen between these companies when we prepare our final statements. So foreign exchange will be something that you'll have to look at. Currency will be something that you'll have to look at, directly part of your F3 syllabus here. Now they're giving us the information of the 3 overseas offices that were mentioned. So on your screen is the image of the 3 overseas offices. You'll see first and foremost there is the head office, which is the Westland office. So the Westland office is our administrative base. It is home to PC game development, which means games for PCs are developed here, for computers are developed here. It is a base for global marketing strategy and local marketing in Westland and surrounding region. So what I'm seeing over here is that the head office deals with global marketing strategy, which means it sets the strategy for the entire 3 offices and our products around the world. But it also specifically focuses on local marketing in Westland and the surrounding region. So it's acknowledging that local marketing in Westland is something that is important. If you look at the other 3 offices, it's the second is the Eastland office. So it is home to mobile game development, so smartphone and tablet. Okay, I'm in that market as well. I develop PC games, I develop mobile games as well. Smartphone is a huge booming area. We know that because of our industry analysis. It is also the base for local marketing for Eastland and surrounding region. Again, it is notified that local marketing is important. So the global direction, the strategy is given from the head office, but then local marketing teams are also present. Same in the Southland office, we focus on console game development. We develop games for consoles over here, and a local marketing team for Southland is present. In Northland, we have our research and development activities, base for local marketing for Northland and the surrounding region as well. So they're telling me that I develop PC games, smartphone games, and console games. Yes, pretty much present in all areas, pretty much present into all major ways the games are played. We already know that. In the Northland office, we only deal with major research and development. So again, research, development, innovation, technology has been given importance here because we have a separate office for that. People are only focusing on researching, developing, because it's very important in this market. So as we can see, the head office is the major admin base, and it gives directions to Eastland, Southland, Northland. Each of these offices focus on a specific task or a specific responsibility. They've been given responsibilities. They've been given the direction to focus upon. They've been given their job. So if something goes wrong, you can hold them accountable. This is your modern accounting system or management system, if you want to call it that way. If anything goes wrong in console game development, Southland office is to blame. This seems like a logical distribution of work, seeing the large number of variants that our company offers, seeing the large number of people that are involved in the game development. So I feel the way this structure has been laid out is good. This office structure is good. Pixelwiz was founded in Westland, and it still has its head office in that country. Founded in Westland, it's my home market. The head office is the base for all of the group's admin functions. We already know that and we saw that. The head office also acts as a base for development of PC video games. Already spoken about it. The three overseas offices were acquired individually. Remember the word acquired over here. We saw this in our industry analysis as well. If any company is looking to diversify in this particular market, acquisitions have been a feature of this market. And our company Pixelwiz has also used the acquisition strategy. The three overseas offices we've acquired and were acquired individually rather, as Pixelwiz expanded and moved into new areas of game development. So they're saying that these offices were acquired. We don't know if we acquired a small company and then renamed it to become one of our offices, and then it handles only, for example, smartphone development. Then it handles only, for example, console development. We don't know that. But yes, the word acquire means that we are happy to enter into a market by swift acquisition, because acquisition has its own benefits over organic growth. Let's just spend a couple minutes and think how acquisition is beneficial for my company, how organic growth is beneficial for my company, which means using my own funds to grow, using my own company to grow, setting up my own company on my own to grow. That's organic growth. On the other hand, just weigh it against what an acquisition would be and would do for your company. Just think a couple minutes for it. Pause the video here. Think of that. Have ideas in your mind, and we'll then move forward. Each of the overseas office that we have has its own specialism regarding programming for different gaming platforms, which means the Eastland office has expert people who work on smartphone games. They are best at their job. So we have special functions which help to focus on the task at hand. Because when you have been given only a function, only a particular department, only a particular area to look at, you can develop specializations, right? For example, all of the Eastland office staff are working only on smartphone and tablet games. So over the period of time, they're going to become an expert on that. So that is a big comparative advantage for my company if I look at it that way. The Northland office's research and development activities are focused on the creation of new and improved game development software that is used elsewhere in the Pixelwiz group to create games for sale. So this aspect brings our transfer pricing into the picture, because the Northland office develops the game development software, right? And then it will internally transfer it to the different offices so that they can use it when they are making their own games, right? Now, do you think one part of the company is going to transfer something that they have made, something that they have come up with, to another part or another department in the company for free. Because at the end of the day, all of the department's revenues, all of the department's costs will be actually looked at to see which department has done well or not, right? So if the Northland office just keeps on giving all of the game development softwares that it develops for absolute free without any recording of what is happening, then how will we be able to calculate the cost? How will we be able to know the actual value of that game development software? How will we be able to know the actual just costing of a particular product? For example, let's say the Eastland office created a smartphone game with the help of the game development software that the Northland office developed. How will I cost it? I will only get the costs of the Eastland department, right? Because there is no cost for the game development software included. How will I price my game? It will become a very difficult task. So transfer pricing, which is part of your E3 and P3 syllabus, is an important consideration here, just to know what transfer pricing is, how transfer pricing works, why is it done. Very important syllabus area for us to keep in mind. If you want to listen to this part again, please rewind the pre-scene, go through it again, make sure you are comfortable with it. Moving on, the Northland office is also heavily engaged in research for new approaches to game development. So, new innovations, such as the integration of VR headsets into updated versions of Pixelwizz's PC and console games. So, we are taking into account the major trends of VR and AR, again, spoken about in the industry analysis. We know about this. All of Pixelwizz's games are intended for sale to a global market. So it's a global company. Whatever I release is released globally. So, we will have various language options when a game is, I'll say, released. So games can be installed with different language options for on-screen prompts and for any speech in their soundtrack. If you've looked at any big major game in the whole world, when you start the game, you would have had many options to choose the language. So all of that is adding to the complexity of making that game. The head office is the base for global marketing, which is responsible for developing the global strategy, such as prioritizing different approaches to game development, release dates, all of that. All sales are managed by global marketing. So the global marketing is making the strategy for the entire company. So it's one centralized marketing strategy department, I'll say. This has its own, I'll say, pros and cons, right? This has its own pros in a way that when you have one head office, the decisions are made better, quicker, faster. But delaying those decisions can become also a scenario, because when you transfer your decisions into the particular three overseas offices, it may take time for them to understand, may take time for them to actually imply upon them. They may not feel it's the right strategy. So it has pros and cons. Just think about that, keep that in your mind. Each of the four offices is the base for a regional marketing function. So, yes, it's a centralized strategy, but also there is a regional marketing function which supports global marketing by studying local trends and just of their respective countries and surrounding geographical regions. The regional marketing managers can also recommend ways to adapt advertising and other forms of promotional activity to better match the interest of local gamers. From the very beginning, we have made it important, or we have made it clear, that in this industry, market analysis, market trend is going to be a very key feature that we must follow. And we are doing that by our regional marketing offices. That's our comparative advantage of my business. All four offices are located in countries that have strong video game markets. So these four markets that I am currently having my offices in are big markets in themselves. This assists in the development of new games because each office can host focus groups and panel discussions involving local gamers. So, as I already mentioned, market analysis and awareness is going to be a very important feature for this industry, which we must pay importance to. And my company has paid importance to it. And that is why we have become the global leader in most of the games that we offer. Pixelwiz enjoys strong sales around the world for its products, and we have many successful titles, which means many successful games. You just say the name of the game, you would have heard it in any part of the world. That's what they're trying to relate to. So this is a serious competitive advantage for your business. You're a market leader, the trend setter. Everybody wants to, is looking up to you rather. Unfortunately, even a major producer such as Pixelwiz cannot predict the popularity of new games or the longevity of existing titles. No matter how big you are, the market is always based on the customer. The market is always volatile. And in today's world where there are so many opportunities, let's say our competitor releases a new game tomorrow and it's more interesting than any game on earth. It can be possible, right? So you cannot predict it. What this tells us is that it's a volatile market, which we already know. It's a very fragmented, highly competitive market. And hence, the organizational structure that we have, the organizational, I'll say, direction that we have, will have to be a flexible one so that you can make and take quick decisions, fast decisions, to look at market trends, adopt them, and serve the customers in the way they want. One of the strategies pursued by Pixelwiz has been the development and maintenance of franchises, which is the industry term for a range of games that are sequels to a successful original. So let's say you make a game X1, it becomes very popular. After some years, you come up with game X2, developing franchises, developing sequels, developing versions. This is what is really happening in the global games market as well. All of us have heard it. So this is a strategy that you will keep in mind that my company is following, my company is taking. Next, developers have discovered that it is often more effective to modify and enhance a popular game with additional features than creating a completely new one. Yes, we already, can make sense of that, because when you just have to add some advancements, fine. If you have to make a new one, then you have to start from zero. So it's going to be more effective in terms of cost, in terms of time, and in terms of the huge profit that you will get when you have a successful game and you create a sequel for it, a new version for it. Players enjoy returning to a favorite game that includes new settings and new elements. The board constantly reviews Pixelwiz's digital strategy to ensure that digital opportunities are identified and exploited in order to increase its competitive advantage. We have spoken about digital strategies, digital analysis, big data opportunities that are available in this online gaming market before in the pre-scene. We've made it very clear, and over here they're telling us that Pixelwiz is accepting digital strategies, digital opportunities. It's a big competitive advantage for the company. You're ready to accept this, you know the benefits. So this gives also the rise to the concept of cybersecurity over here. Because yes, you will, let's say you're using the best possible technologies to analyze, you store all the data, you analyze all the data, serve your customers better, but it comes with the inherent cybersecurity risk. What if some data gets leaked? What if some personalized data gets leaked? So looking at a cybersecurity framework and a systematic cybersecurity management team could be the next step for our business as we continue to grow. It's already a big, huge company. This should be something that is given importance. So keep this in mind. Cybersecurity, part of your P3 syllabus, becomes very important here. In the exam, they can very clearly ask you that now Pixelwiz is looking to implement a cybersecurity management framework. How do you think it will be applied? You'll need your specific P3 knowledge for this. That is why whenever we are going through the pre-scene, I'm highlighting syllabus areas of E3, P3, and F3, which you can revise, which you can keep in your mind. Pixelwizz's most successful game to date has been Jacob Plunge. So the name of the game is Jacob Plunge, which was launched as a console-based action game in 2016, and it rapidly became the best-selling game that year. It's our most successful game till now. So do we not have the opportunity to present this game as a smartphone or a tablet game? It's a possibility, right? It can be an extra source of revenue. So think of it, whenever you are writing something about diversification, new product, you can say that one idea or one strategy can be to think about introducing Jacob Plunge as a, you know, as a game for mobiles, as a game for tablets. It's happening with big games around the world. We've again spoken about this in our industry analysis. Now, this is making me think that if my product Jacob Plunge or if my game Jacob Plunge was one which was very popular, how do I extend the product life cycle of this game? How do I make sure that this game is even more interesting in the future? People still want to play it, people are not bored by it. So, how do I extend the product life cycle of this game? Is something that I'll think about, and this points me directly to my E3 syllabus. The product life cycle is part of your E3 syllabus. So go on to that particular chapter, go on to that particular topic, and see what the product life cycle is. What kind of strategies you can use to extend the life cycle. What can you do to keep your product in the growth stage? What can you do to keep it in the maturity stage? What can you do to prevent it from entering the decline stage? That's an exercise I want you to do. Secondly, another E3 theory that I can replicate over here is the Boston Consulting Group matrix that tells me which category my particular product is in. So the Boston Consulting Group created a particular categorization which says that products can either be stars or cash cows. Stars are one which have high growth and high market share right now. A cash cow is one which has low growth but a high market share. It's coming to the end of its life cycle. So, is there a possibility for me to make sure that Jacob Plunge remains a star? Jacob Plunge always looks at growth, always keeps growing and doesn't enter the stagnation, stage. So again, the BCG matrix is another theory that I will think about. In 2017, Pixelwiz launched a PC version to sell alongside the console game. New versions of the game have been launched every year since 2018. So, keeping it interesting, keeping it in the star category, keeping the life cycle extended. The latest version, Jacob Plunge Moonstar, is presently Pixelwiz's biggest single source of revenue. You can see how important this game is to you. Earlier versions of the game continue to generate revenues. Collectively, the different versions of Jacob Plunge contribute 19% of Pixelwiz's revenues. It's a very important product for us. So product management becomes very important. The game management for this particular product is very important, and hence E3 theories of life cycle costing, of life cycle stage, the BCG matrix that I mentioned is something that you must go through. Most of Pixelwiz's revenue is from games that are downloaded or accessed through the internet on a pay-to-play basis. You have this kind of games as well, and majority of your revenue is coming from there as well. So pay-to-play has been spoken about earlier in the pre-scene. These take the forms of downloads, standalone pay-to-play games, and free-to-play games as well. So you have different options, pay and then download the game. You can pay and play the games, sorry. And there are games which are free to play as well. Games for consoles and handheld consoles are generally downloaded from the console manufacturer's website, which they host on the cloud. So let's say I have a console. I can open up my console, power it up, go to the console manufacturer's catalog there, and I'll be able to purchase the game. The console manufacturers collect the payment, and then any in-app game purchases are also collected, and then it's remitted to Pixelwiz. Because at the end of the day, Pixelwiz has created that game. That console manufacturer is only providing to play that game. And yes, the console manufacturer does take a small commission for providing this service. For example, if you have a PlayStation, you open up the PlayStation, you go to the PlayStation store, and you can download any game that you want. You pay for it, PlayStation collects it, or rather Sony collects it, and then diverts it to the person who made the game. Just give you a simple example. Pixelwiz has its own website for games downloaded to or accessed on PCs, laptops, smartphones, and tablets. So you can also go to their website and download your games, pay there and download your games. Although the website itself is hosted by Cloudborn, a quoted company that provides internet services to commercial customers, which means it's not my own coded website. It's not my own handled website. It's a website which is software based. So if you just go onto Google and see that you want to create a website, you'll have many options. You can start from zero. You can simply use a software based website company and make your website there, which is an easier option. So that is something that our company has done in partnership with Cloudborn itself could be a very big company. It's a quoted company, obviously, so it has to be a big company. So you're using their services to offer your website. Now, I think that this is a good way to move forward when a company is growing, because it helps you save costs. It helps you, just make sure that you're not worried about the website, because the software providing companies will handle the website. So if the website goes down, then all of that is handled by that company. It's none of your worry. But I will say that for an already established company, for an already growing company, for already a company like ours, which is the market leader, why don't we look at having our own website? Why don't we look at creating a website from scratch and having our own website management team? It can help us bespoke the website to our own requirements, to our own needs. Yes, it will be a big time commitment, a big cost commitment, but it will give you benefits in terms of all the data which you will have access to extra, which you can improve your website upon. Just having your own website is beneficial in your own terms, which is absolutely controlled by you, rather than using a second party, which is the software website provider here. Just a food for thought which came to my mind while discussing this pre-scene, so I put it forward to you. On to the next page now. They're telling me that Pixelwiz continues to sell games on physical media, such as cartridges for consoles and DVD-ROMs for PCs. These are manufactured and packaged by third-party specialists in Westlands. So one part has been outsourced. This is okay because it's not your core activity. Manufacturing and packaging of CDs is not your core activity, right? So demand for physical media is weak in developed countries, but there is a viable demand for boxed games for countries where the internet access is slow. So just think of countries that have slow internet access. I will say it's the underdeveloped countries, or the countries that are still developing. Could be some African countries, could be some South American countries where the internet is still just picking up, where the internet is not viable. But still, these are big markets. These are markets which as a whole, if you look at it in terms of your online gaming industry, are growing. So something for you to keep in mind. So we have access to all of this huge quantity of customer data, as mentioned in the information above. You have your website where people can buy from. You have on the console manufacturer's website as well, you will have your game, so people will buy your game, register for your game. You have all of this different kind of data. And even when you start a game, they'll always ask for your email ID or your name or where you're from and all of that. So as a game manufacturer, you are going to have access to huge quantities of data. And because you have huge quantities of data, obviously data analysis, data has its own benefits. So it's very important that you keep this idea in your mind. The privacy of this information must be of primary concern. Talk about real world examples here of how data leaks have caused companies to pay millions against lawsuits for not keeping private data safe. Another risk for me to keep in mind. So, as part of my risk management risk list that I have been making from the beginning of the pre scene, another risk to think about, another risk to keep in my mind. Now, up until now, nowhere in the pre scene they have told me that our company has a backup site. We have all of these game development softwares, all of this customer data, all of our material will be, I'll say, online because it's, cloud based. It's it's something that the company is embracing in terms of digital technology. But nowhere in the pre-scene have they mentioned that anything about a backup site. This is part of your P3 syllabus, and good data management says that you should have a backup site, especially for companies that are highly data based, technologically based. So something for me to keep in mind. So nothing has been mentioned in the pre-scene about a hot backup site or any kind of backup site. For such a technologically forward industry and company, this should be a very important area. Since we are offering games on cloud, internet-based games, storing information online or on our website, etc., etc., a backup system could be vital. What if your website goes down? What if you lose part of your data? What if your data is hacked? Do you have a backup available to make sure that the company still keeps running, that the company is still able to offer its games without any breakage? Because if anywhere you cannot offer your games, it's a huge loss of revenue. For example, my multiplayer game is one where 800,000 people are online at one time. What if the system goes down? What if we lose some kind of data or the code is broken? There can be anything that happens, right? So these people will not be able to log in, and it's an absolute revenue loss for you. So having a backup site where all of this data is stored, where all of the confidential data is also stored, can be something important. And I have mentioned in the box below how and what a backup site major companies are using. Pause the video here, read it. It's been given for self reading to you so that it sticks better in your mind. On the next page, they give us extracts from Pixelwizz's annual report. So, Pixelwizz's vision, mission, and values. Again, part of your E3 syllabus. Vision is something that you want to achieve in the future, that you are working towards. That is your goal for your company. So, Pixelwiz will always be the best game developer in the real and the virtual worlds. This is our goal. We want to achieve it. We want to be the best in anything that we do. Next, there is mission. Mission is something that you are doing right now, is your present truth. So Pixelwiz exists to attract the talented people who create virtual worlds that enable gamers to immerse themselves in exciting realities. I'm doing this right now. Pixelwiz creates exciting places to work and to play. Now we come to our values. What are the core values of my business? First is imagination, because without this, how can you have a good game? Second is innovation. So setting trends across this industry. You're a market mover. You're first to the market. You're first to embrace technology. Third, commitment. We want talented people who wish to work. Our creative staff are passionate about developing new ideas. And fourth, we inspire teamwork. Pixelwiz relies on cooperation between all workers across all levels. Games can only be created if there are talented, creative people who can count on the support of their colleagues in the entire chain of game development. Now, this is very important in terms of getting free marks in the exam. Why I say this? Because when you write mock answers, it's all about integration. It's all about putting yourself in the role of a person or a senior manager at Pixelwiz. We already know that. Whenever you write your answer, whenever you are presenting something, just start by saying, for example, our vision is to become the best game manufacturer. So this strategy that you're suggesting could be the way forward. For example, the more you can use this in your answer, somewhere, somehow integrate it into your answer, the better marks we get, because integration is what this exam is about. So that is why any hints, tips, or tricks that we are giving you along the way, that we are giving you while doing this pre-C, need to be taken on board and then actually used when we go to our mock exams. Because otherwise, if you don't use it, then what's the point of knowing our company? We are knowing our company so we can give personalized suggestions, we can give very specific suggestions about our company when we start with mock writing. Keep this in mind. Now to another very important section, which is about our board of directors. Now, the board of directors are very important people for any company because they set the tone of the company, they set the pattern of the company, and they are the ones who actually are involved in the day to day and are the ones who propel the company forward with their thoughts. So, a strong board is a very good comparative advantage for any company. What we'll do here is we'll go through one by one of the competencies of each director and see how it will help our company. First and foremost, that's my goal, to understand what each director's competency is, how they're helping the company. Second, using directors in your mock answers is a very, very good opportunity to score marks. How? For example, let's say our non executive chair they've given us, Jose Sos Lucia, is a successful lawyer, or she has been a successful lawyer, and now she's part of the board as the non executive chairman. So the input and related legal experience will be valuable when it comes to running the board, which is the chairman's role. Now, the role of the chairman is to run the board of directors, organize the AGMs, organize the director meets, organize, everything relating to the board is done by the chairman, part of your E3 syllabus. So this competency can help us sometimes when, let's say, we are stuck at some legal issue or some legal thing that we need to get sorted. So it's very important that we make sure that we use it in our answers. Let's say the scenario of the question is like, there is a legal issue in passing a game because the government is not agreeing to some standards, for example. So over here you can start your answer by saying, we can take the opinion of our non-executive chairman who had a successful career as a lawyer and then move forward. Then write your answer. It adds so much value because the examiner knows that you've gone through the pre-scene, you've revised the pre-scene, you've spent time on the pre-scene. So that is important from the perspective of getting marks, plus knowing which people are running the company, which people are responsible for the company's actions. So first we have the non-executive chairman, like I mentioned, Jose Sos Lucia. Jose has a successful career as a lawyer, specializing in sports management. He has been a managing partner of one of Westland's leading law firms. He subsequently served as chair of the Westland Soccer Association. Jose joined Pixelwiz in 2017. So his input on legal experiences will be something that's very important. We already discussed that. But because he specialized in sports management, he will know the details of any sport that may help you to create sport related games. You can use his name there as well. Let's say your company is creating a sport related game. Just put in a line saying, let's take the opinion of our non executive chairman who has been part of this industry for a long time. It adds value. It's a different comparative advantage for your company, plus a comparative advantage for you if you use it in your mock answers. That's what I'm trying to make clear by doing this director analysis here. Next, we have Ilana Shamir. She is the chief executive officer. So Ilana joined Pixelwiz in 1997, long back, as a game producer, 23 years. She was responsible for the development of Mac Jupiter, which was the company's most successful real-time strategy game at that time. So she joined as a game producer. Ilana became head of product development in 2008. Ilana was promoted to chief operating officer in 2013 and then became the executive officer who runs the company. The chief executive officer is a person who runs the day-to-days of the company. So has worked her way from the bottom, knows all the business details, and this will be very important for a CEO who is responsible for the company's operations. Ilana can said to be a big asset for our company because she has knowledge from the bottom. She has worked her way. She'll have that experience, which is very important again. Third, we speak about our chief operations officer, Afifi Al Akiti. So Afifi has a master's degree in software engineering. He has worked for several software companies in a software development role. His most recent appointment before Pixelwiz was a chief information officer, CIO, chief information officer of a major car manufacturer. So he dealt with management of information, he dealt with safety of information when he was at that car manufacturer. Now he is appointed here as an operating officer who has software engineering as his background and information officer as his background. Afifi's responsibilities include external liaison, that is primarily concerned with managing relations between Pixelwiz and third parties who manufacture and sell the hardware that the gamers use to play Pixelwiz's games. Changes to the specification of consoles, PCs, and smartphones can affect the user's ability to play games. So, his job of liaison with these other third party companies who are actually making the hardware where our games are played will be very, very important. Afifi joined Pixelwiz as Chief Operating Officer in 2018. I'll say this is arguably one of the most important parts of the business because our games and the experience that they deliver is what defines our business. If there is not proper communication between Afifi and the third parties who manufacture the hardware, it's going to be a big issue for our games to be likable and liked by the customers. His education in software engineering is a big plus for us because obviously coding software is something that's inherent for our business. He has also worked as a CIO, which means he has knowledge about the benefits of data and he knows the importance of keeping data safe. Something for me to keep in mind. Data is becoming very important. Next, we have Maria as our Chief Finance Officer. So, Maria trained as an accountant with a manufacturing company. She has since worked in a variety of finance related roles with several major companies. She has good finance background. Her most recent role prior to joining Pixelwiz was as director of finance at a game console manufacturing company. So she knows how a game console manufacturing company will work. She joined Pixelwiz in 2016. She worked for a game console manufacturing company, which is made very clear. Since any game console manufacturing company will be an important stakeholder for us, her presence in a leading role could prove to be important. Let's say Afifi is dealing with external liaison with some of the hardware manufacturers. Somewhere he hits a roadblock, he can take Maria's advice, right? Because Maria worked at a game console manufacturing company before. She would know the details. So see how synergies are arising because of our directors, and you can use it when you are presenting mock answers. That is a whole reason. Use your director competencies to make your mock answers more informative, more integrated. That is where the marks are. Anything you're speaking about finance, think about Maria. Think about when you're speaking about operations, think about Afifi. When you're speaking about running the company, speak about Ilana as your chief executive officer. So keep these things in mind, and it will only be possible if you have gone through the pre-scene multiple times. It's not a one time thing. You'll have to keep going through the pre-scene as many times as you can. Next, we are speaking about our chief commercial officer, Ziwu Shen. Now, Ziwu's background is in marketing. He has held several senior marketing positions in the course of his career. He joined Pixelwiz as head of global marketing in 2015. Zivu was promoted to his present position in 2018. He's a well seasoned and experienced director. Marketing related things, if you're writing, you need suggestions, you need help, use Zivu's name when you are writing your mock answers. It will really add value. So these were our executive directors. Any big listed company needs independent non-executive directors as well. First one is Christina Leonova. Christina was a senior manager in a major television company for most of her career, reaching the company's board before stepping down full time. She joined as non-executive director in 2018. So television companies are eventually looking to enhance their viewership. They want more people to watch. Her experience could help us develop games that are more interesting to users, which eventually increases again my game time. So see how I'm trying to understand why a television why a person who worked in a television company joins my company as a non-executive director. She needs to have some kind of competency. That's why we appointed her, right? So this is what I try to get out of it. Next, we have Klaus. Klaus is again an independent non-executive director. He served on the board of several technology companies and then he retired full time. He worked at a leading smartphone manufacturer. Smartphone gaming is a really growing sector for us, so his experience can be invaluable. Next, we have Anna. Anna has had a successful career in banking and finance. She was finance director of a major quoted electronics company before her retirement, and again, she joined Pixelwiz in 2020. After this, they have given us the actual structure of my organization. They've said that executive directors are given functional responsibilities, which is the structure of the organization, how direction passes, and all of that. Firstly, we have Ilana Shamir, who is at the top. She's the chief executive officer, looks at the overall running of the company. Then we have Afifi, who looks at operating. Then we have Maria, who looks at finance. Then we have Zivu, who looks at commercials. Over here, what I'm seeing, one thing that is majorly missing is any IT director, IT officer, somebody who looks at all of, the data harnessing, data protection, the IT aspect of it. Yes, it you can say that it's part of operations itself for our company because it's a technological company. But major companies in today's world have a separate IT director. So it can be something that you can think about, something that you can keep in mind. You can use as a suggestion. But looking at this structure right now, it tells me that it's clearly a very, very straightforward functional structure where the executive officer is at the top, makes the major decisions about running the company. And then there are different departments which are given their own jobs to do. So Fifi looks at operating, Maria looks at finance, Zivu looks at commercials. They are only looking at their specific jobs. Benefits of this are specialization, the scope of expansion is easier, and there's more efficiency because everybody is looking at their area only. Limitations, on the other hand, can be decision taking can take time because Afifi, if he wants to take any decision, he'll have to run it through Ilana, who may have to run it through somebody else just for perspective reasons. There can be conflicts between departments as well. So in the future, you must think about your organization moving into a more divisional structure or a matrix structure, which is part of your E3 syllabus as the company continues to grow. Something that is important for us to keep in mind, that this is my structure right now. One important thing that's again coming to my mind is if you look at Zivu's role, he's looking at marketing and human resources. Do you think managing 5,100 employees is easy? So Zivu is looking at marketing and human resources and public relations. Don't you think it's too much for one person to handle? I think so. So human resource director can also be a person, can also be a role that is divided. So you have two suggestions now. First, why not have an IT director? Why not have a separate HR director? something that major companies generally have. We have 5,100 employees. It's not a small company, it's a big one. So ideas to keep in mind. On to the next page now, where they give us specific committees that are present in my company. So every company that I said is listed, is a big company, generally needs to follow corporate governance rules. Corporate governance is an entire subject in your P3 syllabus, a very important subject to keep in mind. Why? Because over here you'll see that they've given us different director names, and then they've given us the different committees that these directors are part of. So we have an audit committee, we have a risk committee, remuneration committee, nominations committee. Fine, acceptable. But there are certain specifications that we need to look at. Now, after looking at all of my directors, just let me take an overall view first. After looking at all of my directors so far, I can see that all of them are highly qualified, experienced, and fully merit their position and appointments. Some of the directors are relatively new to their positions, but seem to be well educated and experienced to propel the company forward. If we look at the structure of the organization, we can see that the corporate governance code has been honored in pretty much every aspect. The first rule says that the board should be made up of equal executive and non-executive directors. Over here, that is true. We have 4 executive and 4 non-executive directors. Secondly, second rule says that the CEO and chairman must be separate people, so there is no concentration of power. Over here, yes, there is a separate CEO, there is a separate chairman as well. Third rule says there must be audit, remuneration, nomination, and risk committees. Fine, that is also adhered to. So, all in all, the company has a balanced board and the right people to push it forward. These are my key competencies, my key advantages. But I see one small rule which is not clearly applied. Now, all of the committees mentioned for a big company must have at least 3 independent non-executive directors part of them. So as of now, I can consider my company as a very big company, right? It should have 3 independent non-executive directors part of them. In addition, the chairman can be part, but he cannot be the leader of that committee. If you look at our structure right now, the chairman is part of each committee, and then there are only 2 other independent non-executive directors. According to the rules, for a big company, there must be 3 independent non-executive directors, and then additionally, the chairman can be part of it. So we currently have 2 independent NEDs as part of our committees. As we are a big company, appointing another NED who could be part of these committees could be the way forward and could be absolute surety that we have applied our corporate governance rules very clearly. Because corporate governance is very important for any big company. This is part of your P3 syllabus. Please make this area clear. As I move on, I see that on the next page they've given me Pixelwizz's principal risks. Risks make me think. Risks worry me. But it's important that we identify them, because again, market analysis is very important. And analyzing risks and then how to mitigate those risks, something important for our company. So Pixelwiz, the first risk identified rather, is Pixelwiz is dependent upon the continuing success of a small number of game franchises. Jacob Plunge provides 19% of the total revenue, and our 6 best selling franchises generate 82% of the revenue. So know that you have 6 best selling franchises, and these are giving you 82% revenue as your company. So there's a risk, right? What if one of these fails? So the mitigation here is that Pixelwiz invests heavily in both time and money to maintain close contact with gamers in order to understand what they want. We have many new games in the pipeline as well, and we stand ready to replace our existing titles. Fine. So thought about the risk, thought about the mitigation. Second risk is the development of exciting new games may be inhibited by the limitations of hardware. If you make the best game on the earth, because there is no hardware support available, it's of no use. So Pixelwiz encourages third-party manufacturers, particularly those manufacturing dedicated games hardware such as consoles, to develop their products so that they can offer improved gameplay. So you have a good liaison system that is going on. Third, some third-party hardware manufacturers also develop and publish their own games, and in that respect are also direct competitors. For example, Sony has its console PlayStation, and Sony itself is a game developer as well. So on PlayStation, which is a console, they sell their own games. So that console manufacturer is your partner, but he is also your competitor in certain cases. Our role, so how do we mitigate this? Our role as a leading games developer ensures that these third parties remain responsive to our needs. We are one of the biggest game makers in the market. If they don't, if that particular console manufacturer does not have our game in their catalog, people might not want that console because our games are so popular. That's a mitigation. But over here, I see a major opportunity. As my company continues to grow, can I not become a console manufacturer myself? It could be a diversification area which can be looked at. Major companies have done this. Another risk identified is that game creation is a complicated process that requires technical and creative thinking. Pixelwiz is dependent on retaining skilled staff. So, how do we mitigate this risk? We pay close attention, we keep our staff happy. Those in key roles such as game producers, designers, artists are paid much more than the industry average. So we are keeping our staff happy, which is very important for team management, team building. Fourth risk identified is our business model is heavily dependent on the availability of internet connectivity. So, something that we have spoken about. How do we mitigate this risk? So that is something that we'll have to keep in our mind. And I want you to read this risk and this mitigation just to have a sense of ideas that our company have identified as risks and how they are planning to mitigate those risks. This is making me now think. Now, are these the only risks that my company faces? Are these the only areas that I need to focus upon? I'm not very sure. So, why are we limiting our analysis of risk? In today's environment, risk analysis, risk management is very important. And that list of risks that I was asking you to mention from the very, very beginning, when the pre-scene started itself, I asked you to maintain it. That comes in handy over here, because you'll see that some of the risks correspond that you've written to this risks that our company has identified, but there are a lot more many risks which the company has not taken into account, like personal data risk, like change in government policies risk, reputational risk, litigation risk, staff turnover risk, financial risk, increasing the flexibility in the management structure. There are so many lists which are not yet taken into account, which I have mentioned here. Plus, you would have picked up when you were doing this pre-scene with me. That is why it's important to be, very clear and very concentrating in nature when we are doing this pre-scene. It's not a one-time thing. The more times you'll go through this, the more you'll understand it, and you may come up with other risk avenues as well. But remember, why are we limiting our risk? Risk management is a very important thing and a continuous process that the company must keep doing. Now we move on to what I call as the third part of this pre-scene analysis. First part was merely introduction and the industry analysis. Second part, we got to know more about the industry and more about our company. Third part is when we start dissecting the financials of my company step by step to understand what the position of the company is, what the company's, I'll say, major strengths are, financial strengths are, what the company is looking to do in terms of growth. We'll try to identify and break down all of that as part of this very detailed financial analysis that we are going to do together. So let's begin with part 3 now, financial analysis, again with motivation, commitment, and concentration. So we will one by one look at each and every financial which is given in the pre-scene. We'll first look at the absolute numbers, which is on your screen now, and then we'll show you an analysis that we have made based on these absolute numbers to make your pre-scene understanding even more solid. So looking at Pixelwizz's consolidated statement of profit or loss, first and foremost, looking at this statement of profit or loss, I can clearly see that from 2019 to 2020, my company has grown. Roughly 500 million worth of revenue has been added, because the numbers that you see are in millions. So just imagine the size of your company. The operating costs have increased slightly. Revenue has gone up by a much larger percentage, as you can clearly see. The operating profit naturally went up. Our finance costs have remained the same in this year. And then your tax expense still went up a little bit, which evidently could be because your revenue is higher. Secondly, it also could be because the tax rate in your country has increased. Thirdly, it could be because you gained more revenue in this year in a country that has a higher tax rate, because you're a global company, right? So there are three reasons why the tax expense could have increased. First, because you earned more money, obviously you'll have to pay more tax. That could be one reason. Second reason, tax rate went up in your country. Third reason, because you are a global company, let's say you earn more money in the UK, for example, which has a higher tax rate than most countries, could be possible. And then your profit for the year still went up. So these are absolute numbers that we are first explaining to you. After you've looked at these absolute numbers, let me take you to an analysis that we have made and makes your understanding rock solid. So what we have done over here on your screen is created the absolute numbers and presented them rather as percentages, because you can remember it in a better way. So the first purpose of this is to make sure that you can present it, or you can remember it in a better way, rather you can understand it in a better way. The second reason why these percentages are created for you again is so that you can use it in your mock answers. When I go to my mock writing, let's say you're writing anything about diversification, company growing. Start your answer by saying that our company has grown, our revenue has rather increased by 12.3% in this year. This shows a positive sign and a good sign about the company. And then just continue to write whatever the question is asking you. But if you start in this way, just imagine the examiner knows that this person has gone through the trouble of breaking down the pre-scene, breaking down the numbers in the pre-scene and presenting me with percentages. You don't need to show them any calculations. Just directly use this number. It's been given by us to you. The least we can ask you to do is include it. And yes, I'm not going to ask you to remember every single number. It's absolutely impossible. So that is why I have highlighted some numbers in red, like the revenue, like the operating profit, like the profit before tax, which you can try to keep in your mind. And if you go through the pre-scene, every other day, at least 20, 25 times before you sit your exam, you'll automatically have these numbers fit in your mind in some way or the other. So this is a effort that you'll have to do from your end, not from a learning perspective, just from a perspective of showcasing your knowledge better in the exam. So your revenue has gone up by 12.3%, which is a very healthy increase. Operating costs went up. Your operating profit still went up with a very healthy percentage, 15%. Financial expenses remained the same. No new loan was taken, so no new interest. Profit before tax also a very healthy increase of 15%. You will see that it's a great, I'll say, way and great prospect for the company, because percentages are high, company is growing, it's heading in the right direction. These areas are what you can keep in your mind. These numbers are what you can keep in your mind and replicate them when the time is right. So firstly, these numbers help you understand the company's position better. First, we give you those absolute numbers. Second, we showed you our own easy version of them in terms of percentages. And third, we want you to replicate them And you'll only be able to do that if you've gone through this presentation that we've made for you multiple times. Without that, don't expect yourself to remember this stuff. Go through it every other day. That's our recommendation. The second thing that they've given to me over here is my consolidated statement of changes in equity. Now, this shows me that the share capital has remained constant this year. No new shares were issued. The retained earnings brought down from last year. And there was a currency reserve as well, which was negative 64 million. The profit for the year is 2314. The dividend paid out this year is 2065. And there has been a gain on translation, which means over here the aspect of F3 comes into the picture. F3 states that in any kind of currency risk, there can be three reasons. First, economic risk, risk because of the economy. Second, transaction risk, risk because of a transaction occurring. Prices can go up and down if when you are dealing in a foreign currency, your exchange rates always are fluctuating. Third, there is translation risk. My bad. So economic risk, transaction risk, and translation risk. Over here, translation risk means that because you are a company that has offices, assets in different currencies, in different countries, the value of those assets can also go up and down, right? Because that value has gone up, we have had a gain on translation of 12 million, because at the end of the year a consolidated statement is made, right, is presented. So when I transfer the value of those assets from that country's currency to W or West, my country's currency, there has been a gain. So that gain has been notified over here. It's only a bookish transaction. It doesn't happen in real, but it happens in the books, which has been showcased over here to us. So translation, there has been a gain of 12 million and it has been noted. What I make an analysis about over here is that my profit was 2314 and the dividend was 2065. This tells me that I paid a dividend to the shareholders. Yes, dividend policy, how the dividend is paid out, what kind of dividend is paid out, and the dividend policy is again part of your F3 syllabus. You got to revise it. But over here, I can clearly see that a majority part of my profit is paid out as dividends. If I do the dividend payout ratio calculation, it says that about 90% of my total income or my total profit was paid out as dividends. Now, this tells me, now let's take an example rather. So, I'm telling you that my company made a profit of 100 million, for example. I paid out 90 million. I retained only 10 million of it, which tells me that in this year or in the coming 1 or 2 years, I don't really have a clear plan or a clear structure to follow. Because if I had a plan of, let's say, launching a new game next year and it's going to cost me 100 million, do you think, or let's say 500 million, do you think is going to pay out such a huge dividend? I don't think so. Or let's say you had a plan of buying a new company, you had a plan of setting up a new office, total cost is coming up to 500 million. Will you pay 2000 million worth of dividend? I don't think so. You'll retain that money so you can invest it in those particular plans, which means in the coming short term, my company doesn't have a growth plan or doesn't have something in the pipeline that is going to need a lot of cash, a lot of money for, which I will say is a good thing in terms of shareholders, because you get a good dividend payout. But in terms of the company, and with such a dynamic industry, it can be said that our company should be thinking of ways to use this money, because major technology companies are reinvesting the money that they earn so that they remain forward, so that they remain market leaders. Something for us to really think about. On the next page now, we have absolute numbers in terms of our consolidated statement of financial position. Now our statement of financial position is the balance sheet. At the end of the day, it gives us our assets and liabilities. If you look at our non-current assets, they went up a little bit in terms of property, plant and equipment. Goodwill has remained the same. Software development costs, which are capitalized, are part of our assets. Yes. For current assets, we have a small number of inventories. We have some receivables and we have huge cash on hand. On the equity side, share capital remained the same. Currency reserve decreased a little bit. Retained earnings increased. Borrowings pretty much remained in the same picture, so the finance cost did not really change. Your trade payables in the same range, no huge, burst up. Tax liability, okay, we know why it would have increased, why it could have increased. Deferred revenue has gone up. Total equities and liabilities and the total assets obviously match because that's the balance sheet that they have presented to us. Now we will look at this same absolute numbers in terms of percentages that we have created for you to make it even more easy for you to understand. We are looking at the percentage numbers on our screen right now. So what we will do is we will look at each number one by one. So first and foremost, the return on capital employed is one of the best measures to look at in terms of how much the company is giving back in terms of the capital that has been employed. So the return on capital employed measures the effectiveness with which it utilizes its capital, which may be either in the form of debt or equity. From the above table, it is clear that the company is very efficient in terms of utilization. This rate varies across different industries, but still a rate of 1.52 is very good in terms of return on capital employed. If you employed $1 of capital, you're getting 1.52 in return. So it's good, right? Next, the non-current asset turnover has gone up. The non-current asset turnover indicates how much sales a company is able to generate per dollar investment in fixed assets. So over here, if you invest $1, you get close to $3.50. So it's very good, right? It's a very good ratio when I look at it from outside. Current ratio and quick ratio tell me about the liquidity position of the company. A ratio of 1 is usually ideal when you look at the quick ratio. In this case, the company is doing well in terms of liquidity. It's good in the ranges and will easily be able to take care of its short-term obligations. Interesting to note that the quick ratio is not very different from the current ratio because a large proportion belongs to cash and not inventory. In the quick ratio, we just remove the inventory. Over here, our inventory is a very small percentage. We are not in manufacturing and selling, right? So current ratio, quick ratio is pretty much the same because of this reason. Having cash is the best form of a short-term asset, as inventory might be difficult to sell, which our company has nothing to do with. When you have cash, you have lots of opportunities to look at growth aspects. If you want to buy a company, a small subsidiary, you will be able to do that quickly. Return on assets pretty much remain the same. Your receivable turnover is a new ratio that we've calculated for you. So the receivable turnover measures the effectiveness in collecting its receivables or money owed by clients. It has increased slightly, which is a good sign. Your gearing from 0.3 has gone to 0.26. So I will say that a very small part of your company is financed by debt. Think about it from the financing perspective. Think about it from the F3 perspective. We clearly know that debt is cheaper than equity in terms of financing, and it gives you a lower weighted average cost of capital, part of F3. So if I already know that, why isn't my company utilizing a little bit more debt than equity? Because it could be cheaper and it could reduce my weighted average cost of capital. So let's say in the exam they ask you, we are looking at financing options. You can tell them that our gearing ratio is relatively low right now. Let's look at taking on more debt, be a little bit more aggressive as debt is cheaper than equity. Something for you to keep in mind, and you only understand it because of this analysis that we have made for you. So keep this very clearly in your mind. On the next page, they have given us our share price trajectory, our share price, just the history of our share price, if you want to put it that way. You will see that Pixelwizz's share price in 2016 was around $10. And in 2021, it peaked to almost $60, which tells me that a 600% increase in share price over 5 years, which is absolutely off the chart growth. So some of my games, some of my products would have really delivered in this time. Initial price was $10, now it's $60. Very important information they give us here is that our beta for the share is 0.71. Now the beta factor is something that is again part of your F3 syllabus, but I'll provide the details here. Now beta factor allows the investors to understand whether an individual stock moves in the same direction as the rest of the market. It also reflects how volatile a stock is in relation to the rest of the market. A beta equal to 1 indicates that the price activity is strongly related to the market, which means if my beta was 1, if the market goes down, my share price goes down. Market goes up, my share price goes up. That's what a beta equal to 1 indicates. Strongly related to market forces. A beta less than 1 is theoretically less volatile than the rest of the market. So if something wrong happens in the market, let's say the economic report for this year is not very good. Let's say a pandemic is coming this year, not very good. There are certain companies and certain shares that are not really affected by major market forces, which is a reality. Now, beta is used in your capital asset pricing model. It's used to calculate your weighted average cost of capital as well. So it's an important factor to understand. But if I look at Pixelwiz's beta of 0.71, it clearly tells me that my company is less risky when compared to the rest of the market and less likely to be affected by changes in external factors like tax rates, interest rates, unemployment. Because even if you see, for a very simple example, during this pandemic time, we don't need to keep the pandemic in our mind when we are doing the case study, but I'm just giving you an example. There was a pandemic, everybody was staying home, everybody had more chances to use their time. Online games really picked up. So in any situation, if there is any market factor that comes about in the real world, your company will be less affected than the others, and that is what the beta of 0.71 says. Keep this in mind. Interestingly, as we move on, they have given us the financials of a competitor as well. So we have to do some competitor analysis. The name of the competitor is Printain. So it's the Printain Group's financial statements that I'll show you, and we'll compare it with Pixelwiz's financial statements. Now, as always, I will compare the absolute numbers over here, but in the pre-seen PDF file that you will be having, you will see a percentage calculation as well. So the same way we did the calculation of change in revenue for Pixelwiz, we've done each and everything for Printain as well. That's for you to go through. That's for you to take in. And then we have done a comparative analysis as well, which I'll do with you deeper in the pre-scene. So let's look at absolute numbers. You'll see that the revenue of Printain was more than ours in 2020. The operating costs were also more. The operating profit was more. Finance costs remain the same. The tax expense also went up. Their final profit was larger than ours. So we are already one of the big world leading companies. Printain is even bigger than us in terms of revenue. So it's larger than us. Maybe it has a couple of more games. Maybe it's older than us. Maybe one of its games or two of its games in the last 2 years really became popular. That can be a situation. Then they've given us the statement of consolidated changes in equity. So consolidated, the statement on changes in equity has been presented, and you will see that again, Printain also has paid out majority of our dividends, higher than ours, in fact. So Printain paid dividends to its shareholders in 2020. Their dividend payout ratio was coming up to 94%. So we can say that maybe two or three of their games are in the motion, are already very big hits in the market, so they don't need money to invest at this current stage. So they're making their shareholders happy by paying out a high dividend ratio. We can also say that this may be the trend in this market, that pay out high dividends so your shareholders are happy, because both companies are doing pretty much the same, right? Something again for us to keep in mind. Now, looking at the absolute numbers in our consolidated statement of financial position, we won't go too much into the detail, but we'll look at the major areas. If you see, the total assets are pretty much in the same area. So I won't say that Printain is a bigger company than ours, because the numbers are pretty much matching. I'll say that Printain could be a company that's older than ours because their goodwill is more than ours. We can say that they may have in the last couple of years have certain games or certain products that have really burst onto the scene, that have really helped them. In terms of share capital as well, there's not a huge difference. So I'll say their company is not bigger than ours in absolute terms, but they may have been ahead of us because of their brand name, because of couple of games really working and really becoming prominent on the world stage. That is possible. Now, to make your studies even more specific, we have presented the comparative statement of profit or loss. So we have compared the percentage numbers of Pixelwiz and Printain for you over here. You will see that Pixelwiz grew its revenue and operating profits at a faster rate. My revenue has increased by 12% and their revenue is only 6%. Shows that right now my products are really what people want. Same way, the operating profit also went up. The profit before tax is also higher than theirs. You will see that I am on the rise. We are on track to be bigger than Printain in the coming years because my revenue is growing rapidly. Maybe the games that I have right now are overshadowing the games that Printain have, because my growth is very strong, for us to keep in mind and for us to present when asked, when we go to our mock questions. You can say that our growth has been at least almost double of that in terms of revenue than Printain, than our main competitor. That's a good sign for our company. And then start to write your answer. It adds a lot of value. So we are giving you this information so you can, at the end of the day, present it in a better way, present your mock answers in a better way. Now, the next part we are going to is the news analysis section. Now, in the pre-scene, you have been given certain news analysis cutouts or news analysis sections that are part of the pre-scene itself. We have analyzed those parts for you. We have broken down those parts for you, and we have presented it in a very simple and understandable way in my pre-scene analysis document. You won't have to search here, there, anywhere. It's very well broken down. Ideas have been put there, and all of that is already present. I will only ask you to read through it. I will only ask you to go through it and make sure that while going through it, you're picking up on the ideas, because it's been broken down by us in words itself. It's been broken down by us in simple presentation, simple paragraphs, as it as we find areas to look upon. So it's something that you must spend time on. It's not that it's not important. It's something that will really give you good ideas, but we feel it's better presented if we give it as an explanation in the pre-scene PDF file itself. So that's something that you can go through. And with that, we will come to the end of our pre-scene analysis finally. And you will see the amount of details, the amount of effort that has gone into preparing this pre-scene. So do not assume that by going through it only once you'll have an idea of what the company is. It's absolutely impossible. You'll have to go through the pre-scene multiple times. I recommend students to go through it every other day till the date of your exam, because only then these numbers or whatever the director names are will automatically be fit in your mind. You'll automatically be able to make sense of it and use it if it's there in your mind when the time comes. So that is why please use this pre-scene analysis well. And if you have any questions, please do let us know. Thank you for completing this pre-scene. Spend time on it, understand our company. It's very important for the strategic case study exam. Thank you.